Her role is that of submissiveness, and that means that she should recognize that she is a woman and be glad to be a woman. Never want to be what you are not equipped to be.
Can I get your name and where you're from, if you don't mind?
I'm Kai.
Kai, can I get the spelling for you?
Straight out of Dogtown, K-A-I.
Hola Chula! Thank you so much for clicking on to this video, and if you are new here, well then hi, hello, my name is Kai, and here on my channel I like to share my experience as a person who has left the Jehovah's Witnesses organization and what it was like to grow up in a high control Christian cult. Before we get into this video, do not forget to leave a like, and if you would consider subscribing to my channel, well then that would be awesome. In this video, we are going to be talking about some rather sensitive issues such as sexual assault and domestic violence. So I just wanted to give you a warning before we just jump into everything. Being a woman in this organization is extremely different than being a man, and I think in a lot of ways it's worse. In the Jehovah's Witnesses, women are seen to be like second-class citizens. I just want to share some of the realities that these women are going through and the degradation and the humiliation that is being thrust upon them constantly. Just to get into it. I don't think it should be shocking to anyone that misogyny is rampant and free in this Christian organization, just as it is in many, many churches, many belief systems. And the way that the Jehovah's Witnesses justify this is right there in the Bible. When God saw that Adam was lonely and that he needed a complement, or he needed a helper, so he created Eve. Basically, he said that she would be in subjection to him, and therefore all women everywhere should be considered as lesser beings to men. Because it's in the Bible. So first of all, I think it's important to say that every position of authority that could be held in the organization is held by a man. The best that you can do as a woman in this society is to become a full-time pioneer, or perhaps even like a special pioneer. All that being a pioneer is just giving more free labor for their conversion efforts. It's basically just being an unpaid salesperson for the Watchtower publishing company. It's thankless, first of all. You're not being compensated. You're losing hours of your life. Why anyone would want to do that? I feel like you'd have to be brainwashed to do that. Like, that just sounds terrible. But this rule that women are not allowed to hold any sort of position of authority goes really deep for them. Let's say that there's a meeting happening, but for some reason there is no Jehovah's Witness man who is baptized who can give a talk or give a prayer. The literal last resort is to ask a woman to do that. If there is even a 12-year-old boy and he is baptized, well then guess what? We're all listening to him now. We're all taking ideas from the kid now. Because women are seen as so much less than even a young boy that it would just be like disrespectful to the natural order of things, I guess. If a woman, however, does give a talk or give a prayer, she has to be wearing a head covering to symbolize that she is aware that she is not designed to hold this position or to hold this authority. It's really ingrained into you from being, like, even being small. Like, I vividly remember telling my parents that when I grew up, I wanted to be an elder. And an elder is like the top ranking person at your local congregation. And my parents laughed. They were cracking up when they heard me say this, and they said, you just better hope you find a good husband. Your only hope is to marry a man who is spiritual, who wants to have these sort of special privileges, and you just get to go along for the ride. They have these like traveling ministers or traveling like I mean, we call them COs. Obviously, most of the time, these brothers are married, so they have a wife. Like, basically, she's a groupie. Like, she's just a groupie, you know? She's just a freaking roadie, like, watching her husband have all these privileges, do all these amazing things, be this admired person, and all, you know, she gets to do is be a wife. Even couples who go to Bethel, like, all the women that are there are only there because they married the right guy. And that's fucking stupid to me. They even changed lyrics to a song because the song suggested that the women were giving directions to men. The lyrics of the song that everyone was singing, not just the women, were offensive to some brothers who thought it was inappropriate that these silly women are giving me direction. They're giving me spiritual direction. A person who just happens to be a man. Like, as if. They'll often show women in the kitchen, young girls in the kitchen, and the men are sitting in the study or in the living room, and they're holding the Bible, or they're wearing a polo shirt. I'm 1, 2, 3, every one of them. Communicating to all women and young girls that your place is not talking with the men. It's sitting in the kitchen and making the food, and that's just the way it is, sweetie. Like, but don't worry, because not only do they have a biblical explanation as to why women are less than men, they also have a scientific explanation. One of the members of the governing body, which is like the top of the top, they're the ones delegating doctrine. One of those guys was giving a talk, and he literally said that women are in subjection to their husbands or to men in general because they have a 10% smaller brain than men.
You know, scientists say that the cranial capacity of a woman is 10% smaller than that of a man. So now this shows that she's just not equipped for the role of headship.
Who's going to tell him that brain size has absolutely nothing to do with your capacity for intelligence? Even in your own home, your husband is the head of the household. That means that if your husband says that he wants to do X, Y, and whatever, then you just have to go along with it because that's your husband and that's what he said and that's what the Bible said. And the woman is just encouraged to cooperate and not cooperate. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The headship arrangement comes from this 1 Corinthians scripture talking about how the head of every woman is her husband and the head of every husband is God. But I also feel like that's not how life works. Like, that's not how functional relationships should work. Like, each person should have equal say in the things that are literally going to affect them directly. Like, for one person just to make all the decisions is completely removing the agency of that woman. No one's going to ask her if she's happy. No one's going to ask her what she wants. No one's going to ask her what she thinks is best because it doesn't matter. The Jehovah's Witnesses regularly direct many articles and many sermons to women to remind them of their duties to be submissive wives. And conversely, to be submissive within the congregation. And don't get me wrong, like, I know that there are schools of thought out there that say these nuclear family structures, these patriarchal family structures are really beneficial for greater society. But when it's implemented so stringently, of course there's going to be opportunities to manipulate it and to abuse the situation. This organization is failing thousands of battered, abused women, saying that it would actually bring honor to not only your marriage, but to Jehovah God if you stay with this man who is beating you. Even if you think that he might actually kill you, you should stay with him to glorify God. But if you do get a divorce because someone is abusing you for any reason, then guess what, hun? You can't get remarried. You never get to have another husband. You never get to have another chance to have a fulfilling, healthy relationship with someone who cares about you ever again. And that is the case for every circumstance of divorce or separation, unless your husband cheats on you. I just think it's really irresponsible to advocate for a woman not leaving her abusive husband literally as soon as possible. The homicide of a woman by the hands of her partner is extremely common, and it's estimated that every 11 minutes a young girl or a woman is murdered by somebody close to her, somebody like that she's related to, like most of the time her freaking husband. I'm going to share with you guys a Watchtower article that talks about exactly this. Admittedly, there have been instances where an unbelieving husband seems to prove that he is not agreeable to staying with her. He might be extremely physically abusive, even to the point that she feels that her health or life is in danger. He might refuse to support her and the family or severely endanger her spirituality. In such cases, some Christians have personally decided that despite what he might say, the mate is not agreeable to staying together and that a separation is necessary. Other Christians in comparably different situations have not. They have endured and tried to work on improving matters. Why? Yeah, literally why? In such a separation, the two are still marriage mates. If they lived apart, each one would face challenges as mentioned earlier. The Apostle Paul gave another reason for staying united. He wrote, "The unbelieving husband is sanctified in relation to his wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified in relation to the brother. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but now they are holy." Many loyal Christians have remained with an unbelieving mate under very trying circumstances. They can testify that doing so was worthwhile in a special sense when their mate became a true worshiper. Basically, you should stay with your abusive husband on the off chance that he might also convert to this religion and join our cult. We're looking for every person we can get. First of all, this article is dishonest because they're talking about a situation where this man is not a Jehovah's Witness, but they're completely disregarding the circumstances where they very much are, and they very much are playing and pretending to be this wonderful, amazing man, this man of God, and then going home and abusing his wife, abusing his children. Their denial of this is creating a dangerous environment for women stuck in these situations where they literally don't know what to do, because when they go to the elders, all they're told is that they need to be a better wife, and that if they just pray harder, if they just devote more of themselves to the organization, then everything's gonna be fine and Jehovah's gonna handle the matter. That is fucking stupid. Fucking stupid. Don't do that. Don't tell someone to stay with their abuser, and don't tell them that it's their fault that they're being abused. These are the one true people though, folks. These are the one true motherfuckers. And by now you're probably thinking, well, gosh, Kai, could it get any worse? Could it be any worse of a life for a Jehovah's Witness woman? And the answer is always yes. Their rules and their perception of women go so far that even if a woman is a victim of sexual assault, she can still be disfellowshipped if she didn't handle it in the exact correct best way. She could literally be shunned from her whole family, her whole friends, her whole community because of something that was done to her, not something that she asked to happen to her. That could only be described as cruel and unfeeling and probably unscriptural, well, not unscriptural, but certainly evidence as to why you shouldn't live your life this way. In a 1964 Watchtower article, they said that if a Christian woman does not cry out and does not put forth any effort to flee, she would be viewed as consenting to the violation. The Christian woman who wants to keep clean and obey God's commandments then, if faced with this situation today, needs to be courageous and to act on the suggestion made by the scriptures and scream. Actually, this counsel is for her welfare, for if she should submit to the man's passionate wishes, she would not only be consenting to fornication or adultery, but be plagued by the shame. No matter the circumstance, no matter the situation, whether you fought or you froze or whatever your response was, I don't think that that has anything to do with you consenting to have this happen to you. There's no way that you could consent to that. That's literally the definition of the term. A 1974 Awake article says also that if she did not scream, she would ruin her relationship with Jehovah God and the Christian congregation, that then she would be disfellowshipped or excommunicated from it, and that this would be worse than being killed as far as she was concerned. That thought would even come into your mind is all I need to know, that this religion is nothing to do with Jesus, has nothing to do with being Christian. It's anti-Christian. A 1980 Watchtower said, a Christian woman is under obligation to resist for the issuance of obedience to God's law, to flee from fornication. By no means would it be proper for her to willingly submit to being... Although later that same year, 1980, they actually did say that, yeah, I guess it is common for people just to freeze up in that situation. But this teaching, like, sort of raises more questions than it answers. Like, first of all, what is the appropriate level of resistance? What constitutes lack of resistance? What constitutes willful submission to being a victim of sexual assault? And just acknowledging that everyone's response is different, but not necessarily explaining what is and what is not considered a lack of resistance is confusing. It's confusing, and it's built to make sure that if that happens to someone, they're going to feel guilt and shame unnecessarily from a community of people that should be supporting them. And what's even worse is that they also say that you should remember that the person who did this to you is a human with feelings, when that person never considered that you were a human with feelings. The fact that you would even tell someone that they should consider the circumstances of that person who did this horrible thing to you is deplorable. Even though these are like older articles and maybe they're like trying to course correct now, you can never take these words back. This will always exist as something that you really said, with your whole chest, that someone could have possibly done something to deserve being assaulted. Like, honestly, that's not even that long ago. Like, 1980 was not that long ago. This has clearly been a long-held, deeply held belief that women or victims need to perform certain things for you to consider them spiritually clean and acceptable to the congregation. And if you've seen a recent video of mine, you'll know that the Jehovah's Witnesses have very strict standards for their dress and grooming, and of course this adds to their rape culture that they have clearly printed in their publishings. In a very recent 2016 Watchtower article, they said, why should we think about how our clothing affects our Christian brothers and sisters? One reason is that God's people work hard to follow the advice, deaden therefore your body members that are on the earth as respects sexual immorality, uncleanness, uncontrolled sexual passion. Some of our brothers and sisters gave up a sexually immoral life, but they may still be fighting against wrong desires. If we are not careful, the way we dress could make it even more difficult for them to follow the Bible's counsel and fight against those desires. Somebody else not being able to control their desires, their wrongful desires, then that's not your problem. That's not my problem. That is not my problem. That's not my job. It's not my job to make sure that you keep yourself in control. That is like 110% victim blaming. Obviously, their suggestions on how to process and prevent these situations is horrendous. To suggest that women just need to dress modestly to avoid arousing a man so badly that he just has to assault you is gross and wrong and bad. But I think if they were worth anything, they would clearly, blatantly say that a man is in charge of his feelings. A man should know self-control and know that it's not right to do that to anyone. Everyone should know that. To really drive this point home, we're going to look at the post-judicial or post-something whatever survey that the elders would have to fill out after they had spoken to a victim. How many elders felt that the victim was somewhat at fault or willingly participated in the act? And this is made worse because this is in the situation where they are dealing with a child victim. To suggest in any way that a child could comprehend a situation such as that, could willfully participate and consent is disgusting, terrible, awful, horrible, and you should be ashamed of yourselves. I feel like that should be my catchphrase, literally, but you should be ashamed of yourselves. This patriarchal structure is obviously masking a lot of really terrible issues that are being left unaddressed because women are just seen as less. I didn't mean to rhyme that. Therefore, they're enabling abusers. They're enabling domestic violence. They're pushing women to stay in these terrible relationships and then praising them, lifting them up, using them as examples of spiritual and loyal women to the rest of the congregation. So obviously that's a message to every single person, whether you say you advocate for it or not. The fact that you would rise someone above because they stayed with an abusive partner is ridiculous, and it's clear that they have little to no empathy for victims of terrible crimes. It can be really difficult to come clean because most likely your partner is presenting themselves as this beautiful, wonderful person, when in reality they're this totally other horrible person. And it's frustrating to me as somebody who has been in that situation. If they told me that I should just swallow it and take it and be a better wife, then I would be heartbroken. And I'm sure that every Jehovah's Witness woman who has been in that situation felt devastated, felt heartbroken, and abandoned by people that are supposed to love her. I feel like when you are a Jehovah's Witness woman, even asking for a little bit is asking for a lot. And I encourage you to demand even more than what you think you deserve, because you probably do deserve more. I will also be leaving information on how you can find domestic violence and sexual assault resources in your area. You gotta look out for each other, especially now more than ever. Bad bitches stand up for bad bitches. That's all I'm saying. But that was just my thought, just my opinion, and just my video. So if you like this video, then you can leave it a like. And if you like me, then you can subscribe to this channel where I will be talking about whatever I want, whenever I want, because this is the 21st century. And this is also my channel. So subscribe! As always, chulas, I hope that you are having a beautiful, wonderful, amazing rest of your day.